Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, today we've got a bit of an unusual video than I typically upload on the channel. As some of you guys might already knew, is that 2 days ago we had the Cardfight Vision Clash of Kings Invitational Vanguard 0 tournament. And this was a tournament that Cardfight Vision hosted, shout out to you guys, that they invited all kinds of content creators, Vanguard live streamers or Twitch streamers, and other notable people within the community like professional players, competitive players, and just well-known players in general. And of course, your boy was invited as well. And usually when I have a tournament or a region or something like that, I tend to vlog these things. But in this particular case, that isn't really possible because it's an online tournament and we're basically stuck home. So I just am basically here in my own office and there's nothing really to vlog about. So I want to make this particular video and I want to go over the tournament itself, the rulings, what happened, what type of matchups I got, and how everything went in per usual. And what I was planning to do was that I would showcase some matches and then upload the entire fight in full capacity on my second channel that I want to start with all the Twitch clips. However, I did not know that if you live stream via Streamlabs OBS, that it didn't automatically record your video. I thought that was the case, but apparently that's not the case. So my OBS didn't save the video, but then also I forgot, and I didn't know this, that I need to set a certain settings within my Twitch account that Twitch will automatically save the video or the live stream. So that also didn't happen, meaning I have no footage. So sadly I cannot show you guys the tournament from my perspective, but I can at least talk about what happened in general, and I have a little surprise at the end of the video because one mad lad came in clutch, but we're gonna go over there in a minute. So let's take a seat and let's talk about the tournament itself. So let's set everything up. I think that should be fine. So basically the Clash of Kings tournament was a 2-deck format where all fighters had to make 2 decks of 2 different clans and then select one main clan and one main deck and one second deck. And you always start with the same main deck every single round. So you know exactly against which deck you will face up against certain opponents, and you know if you go to second deck, what that deck will mean. And how everything goes is basically you both fight with the main deck in the first round, and then the winner will go to the second deck and needs to win again with the second deck. So you need to be able to win with both decks in order to win the round. So in some regards you could say it's a best out of 3, but a little bit different here. And as you guys might have known, if you see my unpacking videos, I don't have the best of luck here. So meaning I didn't have the greatest options in terms of what type of decks I could bring, and the only clan that I have everything for is Royal Paladin. But you cannot have the same clan for both your decks, meaning only one deck can be Royal Paladin and the other is whatever I can scramble together. Luckily, I was able to complete the Perfect Riser deck, so I could bring in Perfect Riser. I had to craft 2 extra triple Rs, 1 Perfect Riser, 1 Usher Archive, so I had a full playset of those cards to somewhat make the deck a bit more consistent and a bit more viable than what it was before the tournament. So I had to spend a lot of gems here. But so for me, at the last moment, I went with the Perfect Riser as my main deck, and then with a special good stuff Royal Paladin deck that I concocted way back in set 1. So this is the old school Royal Paladin set. I didn't include any of the new Royal Paladin cards, so no Garmor, no Galahad, no nothing. I could build those decks, but I didn't have time to test those decks out, so I didn't feel comfortable with taking a random build and just run with it. So I went with my Royal Paladin deck that I managed to get Legend 10 in Season 1, and then all the way up to Legend 37 in Season 2 before I finished up Season 2 with Perfect Riser all the way up to Legend 51 or 50. So those were my decks. Then we go into the tournament and we go what happened. And I'm gonna say in advance, my streak wasn't good at all. I went 2-3, but I lost the first 3 rounds. So I went loss, and then win in the last 2 rounds. So at least I managed to win or end the tournament on a high note, because after the second and third round, my only goal at that point was to win at least one round. And we managed to win 2 eventually. So with that said, let's dive into the matchups and the opponents that I played. And the first round, I happened to be faced off against AdreusPlaysVanguard. And for anybody that isn't familiar with this guy, he is also a known streamer and zero content creator on YouTube. But this is also the same person that managed to be the #1 ranked player for Season 1 once the global Vanguard Zero version dropped. So he was the #1 player during Season 1 global. And that was shown because he was piloting Royal Paladin, a gold Garmor deck, but he was fully blinked with, of course, the SP Ultimate Art Blaster Blade, but he has also a lot of other SPs, so he had a blinked Royal Paladin deck. And then for his second deck, he went with Kagero. And that's a name we're gonna hear a lot here. Because for the first round, the rounds played out as a 2-1. He won 2 rounds, I won 1. And I believe I won the first round, and then he won 2 in a row. So I beat, with my Perfect Riser, I beat his Royal Paladin, and then with his Royal Paladin, he beat my Royal Paladin, and then immediately with his Kagero, he beat my Royal Paladin. I believe that was how it went. At least I know that I got destroyed by his Kagero, and I just couldn't utilize my Royal Paladin to get me some wins here. Then for the second round, I went up against Joe and Mango 64, and I believe this is a long-time subscriber to my personal channel, so that's interesting to fight off against one of you guys, so that's a really interesting experience. And he also has his own channel with zero content and is also a live streamer. So this was also, once again, somebody who probably has a bit more experience with Zero than me in this regard. And again, this was showcased because I lost at 1-2. And he was piloting a OTT build, which is interesting because it stated that it was a standard build, whatever that means. But I believe it was the same type of deck that my Royal Paladin build was, as it only portrayed cards from set 1. So I beat that Oracle Think Tank deck with my Perfect Riser deck, and then immediately lost with my Royal Paladin deck. And then he switched to the second deck, which was, of course, Kagero. And then again, I was slaughtered, and I lost 2-1 for that round. So I went 0-2 after this particular round. Then for the third round, I went up against, and I want to say this name correctly because it's a bit different, Fadhel Irzadhin. Probably butchered that name. And again, this was a really bad round for me because this time I lost 2-0. I didn't manage to win with Perfect Riser at all. And he piloted again a Royal Paladin deck, and this was a mix between Garmor and I believe Galahad, which was interesting. And his second deck was, you guessed it, Kagero. And both decks, yeah, they went over my Perfect Riser build without any problem. And my hands were terrible, my luck was nowhere to be found. And that's also a thing that was happening here in these first 3 rounds. Nothing went my way. But funny enough, I believe the first round or the second round, one of the 2 players had I hate heal triggers in his description. And then that player proceeds to heal like 10 times in 3 matches. It was ridiculous. Sadly, I don't have the footage because my chat was going off at that point. And for the rest of the tournament, they were keep talking about that particular player. Like, what's up with that description? It's BS. But after round 3, I was faced up against a good friend of mine, Robin from Crossing the Meta, other YouTuber team from the Netherlands. And we're both in the same situation. We lost 3 rounds and we won 0. So we at least knew that one of us would get 1 dub at the end of this tournament. And this was basically a comeback story for me because I swept this round with a 2-0 W. My Perfect Riser went off, and then my Royal Paladin went off, and it was all against his Kagero deck. So I got some type of justification against all the losses that I got against Kagero by annihilating this Kagero build. And I sadly couldn't play against his DP build that then which was his second deck afterwards. Then in the final match, we managed to be paired off against a player named Truechampionsteven. And I was already quite a bit familiar with this gentleman or this person, however he likes to be referred to. I don't want to be formal here. This dude, this guy. I knew that he has already a lot of experience. He was playing at the Japanese servers. He also participated in other tournaments and had some W's on his name. So I immediately knew when I saw that I was facing up against him that I had my work cut out for me, because I knew this was going to be a tough matchup. And I can at least gonna say with the decks that he played, and let me get this correctly before I screw these things up. He was playing an OTT build, which was a Tsukuyomi deck, and he played, you guessed it, Kagero. But I'm not gonna talk about our matchup itself, because this mad lad hooked me up on Twitter and he sent me his footage of the match itself so we can experience on the channel right now the gameplay that we had. The only difference is it's from his perspective, but then again, I had a hand block on the stream so nobody could see my hand just in case for stream sniping and that type of stuff. It's not that I don't trust these guys in the tournament, but it's just for safety precaution, and also we aren't the only one that could potentially stream snipe. Also, people within the chat could spoil information to the other player, and then when they accidentally read the chat, it can spoil the tournament for us. So that's why I did it personally. So the only thing that we're missing out on this information is my live reaction, which is a bit of a shame because it was an insane match, and after everything happened, and you already know that I won because I went 3-2, but after that W happened, man oh man, my chat went crazy, I went crazy, and it saddens me that I cannot show you guys the footage, but the only thing I can say is follow me on Twitch and check my live streams, because you don't want to miss what's happening on that, because I'm probably gonna screw up a couple of more times. But with that said, let's jump cut to the match video and let's see what's gonna happen. I'm gonna voice over this fight to give you guys an inkling or an insight of why I did certain things and why things happened the way that it was portrayed in the video. Okay, so we're starting the first round, and the first match is gonna be, of course, my Battle Riser against his Tsukuyomi deck. And the first couple of turns are gonna be not that quite eventful, especially on my side, as I just do the usual thing that a Riser player wants to do. I ride my custom Riser into my high power custom Riser, just swing with the Vanguard and just sit back and chill. However, the only difference is that we can see in the first couple of turns of the Tsukuyomi player of Truechampionsteven is that he's quite lucky with his drive checks and damage check, as he gets a draw right now, and also his first offensive is also not a draw, so his hand is quite packed in the early game. We can also see that he's tracking on the notepad this entire stack, so he immediately knows what's gonna happen in the mid to late game once he reaches his stack. So we can immediately see he's an experienced Tsukuyomi player, and this is what I meant with I'm gonna have my hands full and more cut out for myself playing against a player like this. So with that said, let's jump cut to my turn 3, as besides this, there's not a lot's gonna happen here. So now we're at turn 3, and as you're gonna see here, is that I'm gonna call down a perfect riser, so I can have 4 risers in my soul, so I have to crit and the extra power. That's just a generic play that I'm gonna do here. But as you're gonna see in a moment here, I'm gonna call 2 grade 3s, and that's basically the situation that I'm in right now, is that my hand is filled with grade 3s, and I have no grade 2s, no boosters, no nothing. And I have also 2 PGs in my damage zone. In some matchup that's really bad, but against Oracle Think Tank, not the worst type of situation, as Silent Tom is a thing. So it's not the worst thing. The only issue that I have right now is that I lack my grade 2, so I have no defensive options whatsoever in this game. So yeah, that's gonna be quite a predicament. Luckily I do hit a draw right here, so I could potentially draw into better cards, but if I'm remembering correctly, those draws don't help me in the long run, as this match will go over quite fast.
Particularly busted, but I will be able to draw. Pretty much get to it as soon as possible. Five not triggers, just a bunch of grade 2s and 1s. Okay, so that's 5, that's 14, so we're 4 cards away. So we can get straight to the stack.
So as you can see or hear right now is that he immediately knows where he is with the stack, and because I gave him 4 damage, he can immediately reach that stack. That might be a misplay on my part, but the issue here is, if you see my hand, and I just explained, is that I have 0 defensive options, I lost most of my PGs, and I already got multiple heals in my hand. So I know that defensive stance is not the way that I can win this game. I need to be aggressive, and I know he has at least 1 PG in hand, so I need to push him to his high damage as fast as possible, that I start forcing those PGs out of his hand. So that's why I put him to 4 damage, because on 4 damage I potentially can hit him twice that are PG activating attacks. But sadly, in this situation, he does get a heal off, although he did call a heal to the rearguard circle, but that's sadly the situation. Also, on my part, no defensive triggers. I believe I get maybe 1, but that's at the last damage when it doesn't really matter anymore. But at this point, he got the entire game. He got his stack.
What happened to blocking the hand? This is the last tournament. This is the last round of the tournament, and I have full faith that Mr. Timely, aka Vanguard Insider, is not stream sniping. I have full faith that he's not. Hey, how you doing?
Also, he's making the regard for the stream sniping. That's what I explained with the hand blocking. I also assume that he's not stream sniping. That's 100% confirmed basically with this video, but as I explained, I just do it for precaution for the people in the chat, just in case for anything. Also here with this turn, you can see once again I can only call grade 3s. I have no grade 2s whatsoever, and this basically confirms that it's over for me this game. I have no defensive options. I'm at 5 damage. He has a Silent Tom in hand, which I already assumed, even though I just sent one to the damage zone. But if you're up against a Tsukuyomi player and they are already at the mid to late game, you can assume they are at their stack and they probably have Silent Tom. So here I'm contemplating if I want to hit into the grade 3, because I know I probably cannot kill them, because the Vanguard will activate a PG and then the rearguard won't. So I decide to hit into the rearguard just in case, so he can't reuse triggers from his hand. Because the worst thing right now is that if I live, that he has a deck full of triggers, because he can put all the grade 3s from his hand back into the deck. Although you can see on the stream right now, or in the footage here, that he has no grade 3s in his hands, but that's something I did not know at the time. Also now he draws into a heal, so he could have sent that back next turn if I left the grade 3 onto the board. And also that 4th damage would absolutely mean nothing, and I much rather remove a potential attacker if he doesn't have a solid attacker in his hand to flood the board again. But at this time, when he called the Silent Tom, I already knew it's GG, as I could not heal out of this situation, and the PGs aren't enough. That was also the only PG I have in my hand, so that's basically everything. And that's basically game 1. So we're gonna dive straight into game 2. So let's jump to game 2 right now. So now we're having game 2, where it's once again my Perfect Riser against the dreaded Kagero deck, the good stuff Kagero. And after playing 4 rounds against Kagero, I started to learn what the do's and don'ts are against this matchup, especially since Ladder is providing the good experience with all the farmers right now. But one of the major things here is, and you're gonna see that in a moment when we go into the grade 2 turn, the grade 1 turn, is that do not and never leave your booster behind your Vanguard, because Tejas is a thing. Always assume they have a Tejas in their hand, and hold and behold, he does have a Tejas in his hand. So that's why I did attack with the Battle Riser. But also, as you can see here, is that I did not ride a Riser. This is already a bad start for me, because it means I need to minus an extra card if I want to activate Perfect Riser's power and critical ability. So that's a bad start for me right now. Also, as you can see here, is he did ride Tejas. So once he ridden the Tejas, I jumped on the screen like, I call it, because Kagero always ride Tejas if they can in a situation when you have a booster, which is so important for your whole engine. So he's going to take it slow, which is pretty obvious and very smart, because if I have a Kira, that allows me to potentially draw if I get 2 counterless. Also, once again, a PG goes to the damage zone. Not really the best of damage that you want in this situation, especially against Kagero, because they have blockade, so you need your PGs for your defensive options. So now we're going to my grade 2 turn, and this is really gonna hurt, because now I'm forced to ride Brutal Jack.
So that means I have 0 risers in my soul the moment that I will ride Perfect Riser on turn 2. Also, I call the Humpty Dumpty. Because the reason why I call these 2 cards is because my entire hand does not contain a riser except for that custom riser and a perfect riser that I'm gonna ride next turn. So this is the worst setup hand that I could have for a perfect riser build. Also, this defensive is what I accounted for, because that's the reason why I called the custom riser behind the Genocide Jack or the Brutal Jack, because it gets an extra 5k power. So it can always hit over defensive trigger. And I needed to be aggressive on this turn because I knew that my following grade 3 turns are going to be very, very weak. I will not have a perfect riser with power, and I will definitely not have a perfect riser with a critical. So that's why I put up the pressure right about now. And also, this is a very smart play of him to remove my boosters, because risers in their usual gameplay with their usual grade 2s are very weak. They have 7Ks and 8Ks, meaning without boosters they probably cannot hit. So eliminating those boosters is a very, very important asset for those riser players.
Countercharge, it's a feels bad man, but it's fine to sacrifice that. Now I can guarantee it, so life is good. Life is fine. Did not overextend for no reason. Wow.
So this is a really hard situation for me, a really tough situation, as even if I get defensive trigger now, I'm going to be up to 3 damage, which is a very painful position to be in against a Kagero player that can potentially either have Blockade, Overlord Dragon, or with his Waterfall is even more tougher to sit in. But luckily, the muscle grade 3, I cannot remember the name on top of my head, but my heal trigger comes in clutch to keep me on 2 damage. And 2 damage is what I need to get some value out of my units, because Perfect Riser generates a Battle Riser for counter +2. But the problem is, as I explained, I have no risers in my soul. So that means I need to go -4.
Oh, baby, that's why you play Transriser, folks. That's a good...
I did have luck with my Transriser to hit another Riser, but even then, I need to waste a Battle Riser from my hand, and then that's about everything that I have. I believe I have a high power custom Riser in my hand as well, but that means I need to sacrifice all my grade 2s, all my Interceptors, and all my boosters to increase the power on my Battle Riser, or on my Perfect Riser. But that means nothing because he has 2 Interceptors. So I cannot remove the Interceptors without a rear guards. I don't have the option. So that's about it. So I decided to sit back, chill, and just go with a normal Vanguard that's an 11k base and just try to win over extra with the extra turn. I'm just gonna sit out this game for the long run. I'm not gonna push it with the extra critical. Especially since I know that he has the perfect guard with Bari thanks to his starter. Also, the heal trigger comes in clutch right now because my hand size is low, and especially against something like Kagero where they can eliminate my boosters and units. So I need all the card advantage so I can keep turning out units turn after turn after turn.
It'd be great if I can get an 11k attacker like an Overlord or something at top deck. Really solid as well. Those are my biggest top decks. I will take that as well. That's pretty solid too. Is it worth it to ride Blockade and swing? And that's a guaranteed of 2 damage, right? Like, that's pretty solid to me. And then worst comes to worst, I can just clear his board using Tejas and Nahalem. So yeah, I'm going to do this. So if he gets the defense, I'm just going to swing at his rear guards anyway, and then he won't get the crit again. So that's definitely the move.
So as we can see in this situation that he ridden the Blockade and then called a very annoying field, because whatever the situation is, I'm going to lose cards and a lot of advantage. And this means I'm either up against high damage or I lose my board. In this particular situation, I rather want to keep my board. So I'm happy that the first damage was not a defensive. So he attacked with the Tejas. So he could not eliminate my booster. And it's really nice because the booster is something that I really needed. Because most of my hands are not grade 1. So this is actually a pretty good situation for me. But once again, you're gonna see I'm gonna swing with a underpowered Perfect Riser, because that's about everything that I got right now.
Show me the 3 razors, baby. You need that crit. If he doesn't get the crit this turn, like, I can just afford to just call whatever I top deck and then just swing twice, you know, and push him to potentially 6 damage if he doesn't get the defensive, right? So we have like a little grind game going on. With these 2 PGs, if he doesn't force one out this turn, and then next turn I get just 3 turns of attacking him with Blockade and boosters, like, that'll be enough to just like win the game. So there's Wind Razor.
So as you can see, at this point, I completely abandoned the Perfect Riser strategy and just going for the little grind game, as Truechampionsteven already noted himself, that it's going to be a grinding game. But I at least committed to this a turn earlier, so I had some preparation for that. It's not like this was something that came into this particular turn. I already made that decision a turn earlier. And I also built my deck accordingly, so I could potentially play in the late game a more grindy game. That's why I played the 4 Ashura Kaisers, and that will come in clutch in just a moment here. So I put him down at 4 damage, and I also cleared his interceptors and his potential board. He does have the Berserk Dragon right here, and he goes for the booster, which is a very obvious and smart play. Because, again, as I stated, the grade 2s of the Riser build are usually weak. I have 9k and an 8k. That 8k doesn't do anything in most situations. So if he wants to, he can just slam the rearguard into the 9k and then keeps his Berserk Dragon protected onto the board.
Some would say. Game winning, some would say. I attack the Vanguard.
So he goes now for the Vanguard, which will proc one of the PGs I have in my hand. And now we get to an interesting situation here. Because this is where I showed my chat my hand for a second. And everybody went GG, that's it, this game. Because my hand was 3 heals and 2 PGs. And I had 3 PGs, but one of those was procced right now. So I decided to go all in. This was my final turn. I knew he had a PG in his hand, and probably 2. I went for 2 PGs. So I ridden the Ashura Kaiser here, so I can potentially restand my units. I called the Transriser to hopefully get a booster. Sadly, I do not get that. So this is the point where I decided, okay, it doesn't matter. I now need to go for everything. I need to put everything onto the board. So this is where things are gonna go a bit spicier, so let's watch. So as I just explained, those 5 cards are 3 heals and 2 PGs. So I call down the Muscle Hercules right here, so I have a 10k attacker, which can hit his Vanguard or potentially rearguard, but my grade 2 rearguard can attack it to its rearguard. Then I call down a PG behind my Vanguard, so my Vanguard can hit his Vanguard if he doesn't get a defensive. So I get 2 attacks in, which means the Vanguard will always proc one of the PGs here. But then I needed more power, so I called a second PG behind the Muscle, so if my Muscle can restand on Ashura Kaiser, it will hit. And I also calculated my deck, as I at this point have 16 cards in decks, but of those 16 cards are 5 triggers, so about a 1 in 3 chance. But I also shuffled back 2 Battle Rises, so actually 7 are triggers. And that's why I activate the Kira, because there's a chance that I will not draw a trigger. And luckily, I did not draw on a trigger. I draw into the custom Riser, the grade 1. So now I attack with the Vanguard. This will activate his PG, and I get the Battle Riser. So this is a very important situation. I can restand my Muscle. That will mean it will hit, because it's a 16k attack, because I called the grade 1 Perfect Guard behind it. But I need to give the power to the Kira, because the Kira become 14k, and then if I get a second trigger, that means it can restand and then becomes a 19k.
He needs to give the power to Kira though. He needs to give the power to Kira though. Does he know this? Does he know he should give the power to Kira and give himself the best chance? Oh, he knows. Oh, he's doing it. He's gonna do it. Watch him, guys. Give it to Kira. Do it. Do it. Yes! Yes! And he gets the second stand trigger. Holy crap, dude. He wins. Holy crap, he did it. Holy crap, he did it. Doubles. Didn't even need a Ashura Kaiser, fun fact. Did not need a Ashura Kaiser to make that happen. That's a fun.
Because now I activate the second PG, which I calculated for. And then the Kira can go for the winning blow if he doesn't get a heal trigger. And he does not get the heal trigger. And also I want to explain here, his chat will also going to say that it was pure luck. And so there is luck involved here, but as Truechampionsteven also will explain in the video itself.
You know what? That was justified, man. Hey, he committed for it, right? He knew he was gonna lose, so he just knew.
Yeah, and basically that is what was the case. I knew I was gonna lose with 2 PGs and all my heals in hand. There were no more heals left in my deck, so I knew I was gonna die. But I could potentially win if I called the units in that specific order and drive check 2 triggers. I knew that was the only way that I could win. If I did not go for that play, there was no way that I could win, because if he had 2 PGs, I would die. There was the only situation where I could win if he had 2 PGs in his hand. So that's why I made that play, and I went for it. It happened, and I got the W. So in some regard, it's luck, but I forced that luck out. So yeah, it was a really, really clutch game, and I was really ecstatic when it happened.
That was beautiful, beautifully executed, and he knew what he had to do too. I was like, he better get the power to Kira. If he doesn't do it, he loses. He also knew I only had maximum 2 PGs in hand too, so like, he played it very well. He gave himself the scenario that he needed to win, and then he won. It was great. That's a great game, right? Like I don't care that I got like literally everything he needed. He played for it, and his deck was like, you know what? You made everything. You did everything. Like he had to play for it perfectly, and then it had to happen, right? Because like if it just happened and he didn't play for it, then he just would have lost.
Now we go to game 3, and this is my Royal Paladin standard build, or Royal Paladin set 1 build, good stuff Royals, against his Kagero. And right off the bat, things start bad because I need to ride my PG. It was the only great one that I had in hand. I did have another PG in my hand, but I do not want to ride this thing. So this was a bad start for me, and I hope things will rectify after this point. However, things will turn around quite fast, as you will see in a moment here.
Bad for me, but you gotta respect it. I really want to aggress him. And then counter push, yeah. So I have a very aggressive hand for turn 2, so I can I don't have an aggressive turn 2 hand, so I need to get as much damage out now and force him to kind of want to counter push me here, and then I can counter push with Berserk Dragon.
So as you can see here, he wants to push me for early damage because he lacks the grade 2 aggressive game. However, there is one card in Royal Paladin that can punish him for doing so. Let me introduce you to the best Royal Paladin card in the game.
Holy crap! The Blaster Dart! I didn't see that one coming, Chief.
So thanks to his early aggression, I was able to ride my Blaster Dart, which I had in my opening hand, by the way. This was the card that I kept in my opening hand. And now I can snipe the Conroe, which is a huge advantage point here. So he doesn't get the free search, he doesn't get the perfect guard, which is a really good situation for me. Then I call down the Blaster Blade just to eliminate his booster, so I can get as much advantage here. Also,
PG.
the PG in the damage zone feels good, or hurts for him.
Oh, and there's the Bellicosity Dragon! Oh, you're kidding me.
The Bellicosity Dragon, for everybody that isn't familiar with Kagero, it allows you to counter charge. So in the grade 2 game, that allows you to get a free Conroe, as you can immediately get the counter charge back. So I luckily could get to my King of Knights Alfred, which is one of the better cards to sit on in this situation, because I can keep hitting hard without needing to waste a lot of cards onto the board. And I decided to only call my grade 3 on this turn, because for one, he has potentially blockades, which makes my grade 2s useless, but also if he hits something like an Overlord, for example, then it means he cannot really utilize the skill to wipe my front row, as it's just a grade 3, which doesn't really do that much. And now I also hit an extra PGs, which means I'm in a really comfortable situation, as it's very likely that he only has one PG in hand in this situation. And it's also a really nice play because my Alfred becomes a 14k attacker, which allows me to hit his 9k even with the defensive damage. And if he gets a defensive trigger, then I only need one trigger to overcome that number. So as you can see, he calls down multiple Overlords and he has another Overlord in his hand. And because I did this particular situation, there is no point in retiring anything. And he also doesn't retire my starter, which is actually pretty good for me, because the starter might look bad, but actually that starter can do some really nice work for me in certain situations when I either lack boosters or I want to have a stronger Alfred, because my Alfred will always be a 12k attacker during my turn. So honestly, I would have said use the Berserk Dragon to kill that starter, because that starter can give me a lot of advantage, especially in this turn, because as you can see, my hand, or as you can see in a moment when I call units to the board, I have no boosters here that can give me advantage. And I also don't want to dedicate a grade 1, because Kagero has a lot of options to eliminate those grade 1s as well. So I was forced to call a Galatine and another grade 2, which is Tristan, so I can have some attackers going on here. But the problem here is that I do not want to keep the Overlord on the board, because he will get too much advantage. So I use the starter to put it into Soul and give one of my rear guards an extra power, so I can overcome the 11k threshold here for the Overlord. So I can at least eliminate the Overlord on the board, and if he doesn't have another Overlord in his hand, he needs to use the skill on the Vanguard, which allows him not to hit any triggers. Also, the heal trigger comes in pretty clutch here right now, so it gets me to a more comfortable situation. But also the extra draw trigger is really, really good, because now I'm going to start drawing into my grade 1s in my boosters, so I can actually build up the board. And sadly, my play around Overlord doesn't really give me a lot of advantage in this particular situation, as he has another Overlord in the hand, as we can see on the screen right now. But that is of course something I did not know. I only knew about the 2 Overlords on the board and the one already in the drop, so I believe he already drive checked one in the early game as well, so the chance of him getting another Overlord was really, really slim here. Also, because I didn't call any boosters, his Tejas will not give him enough value in this particular situation. So now he has a 16k, a 19k, and a 60k column, which means one defensive or him not hitting any triggers will mean that one of the attacks will not hit. And because I didn't dedicate any boosters, he cannot get the value out of the Tejas. That's the reason why I only wanted to call those grade 2s to the front row and not anything more, because I was already in an advantage position with more value and more advantage. So I didn't want to waste that advantage by just overcommitting in a situation that wasn't guaranteed or wasn't necessarily for that particular situation. So in this situation, I sadly didn't get any defensive, and he did get a trigger, so he could still overcome my 20k body. So this looks to be a more disadvantaged position. But now I have access to 4 counterblasts, which can be a Blaster Blade snipe, or it could be a superior call of Alfred if I need something to build up my board. But as you can see, I have another Gan slot in my hand, which then will activate. I can search my last Blaster Blade, because all the other Blaster Blades were already out of my deck, because most of them went to the damage zone. I can then use the Blaster Blade to snipe his Tejas, his Interceptor, and then I can create high enough columns that I can hit his Vanguard multiple times. If he does not get a defensive trigger, I can attack 3 times, at least proc a PG, and then potentially kill him here.
So there's the Blaster Blade. I would assume it's connected. Blaster Blade skill. And retire that boy. Makes sense. He's got half. Okay, there's the Wingall. Makes sense. There's a Soul Saver.
And because I saved all my grade 1s for the previous turn, I can now dedicate the entire board to go for a finishing turn. If I did call a grade 1 earlier in the previous turn, he could potentially snipe it with a Tejas and lose something, and could not set up this kill turn this particular turn. So he does get a defensive trigger, which is a bit unfortunate here for me, because it means I need to get 2 triggers to win the game. Sadly, I get no triggers, so I cannot win this particular turn, but then I can still use my third attack to go into his Overlord, which now means he's in a very disadvantaged situation, because I have a grade 2 Interceptor he needs to overcome, and he also needs to attack my Vanguard twice, because I have 2 Perfect Guards in my hand. That's the reason why I dedicated my board this turn, because I know if I cannot finish him this particular turn, I most definitely can the next one, as I have 2 Perfect Guards in my hand. And he's definitely gonna go for face every single turn when he can, because he wants to win the game, as he know that he is in a disadvantaged position now.
And then he only has a maximum of 2 PGs in his hand, because I've seen him check 1 that he didn't have in his hand. So I'm gonna go like this, force 1 out. And then that last card in his hand needs to be a PG, otherwise we're swinging for lethal. Heal trigger. Draw trigger. Don't draw the heal. Okay. Power there. Ah, he had the last PG. Nice. Solid. Okay. Here's the turn. I lose. Wow. Solid game.
So now we go for my final turn, and because I set everything up the previous turn, I only have to attack in twice, and it's basically everything.
Too.
Also, I draw a heal
folks.
trigger off the top of my deck, so I wouldn't even die if I didn't have the PG in my hand. So basically, the game was already given to me. But he still got, I believe, 2 or 3 more heals in his deck. So he could potentially still squeeze out a turn where he survives and then potentially still win, because I have no interceptors on the board. But I do get a draw, which means my attack will still hit even if he gets a heal. And I get a heal trigger, which means I go back to 4, which basically give me more ways to survive if I cannot kill him this turn. He does get the lucky heal here in this situation. So luckily for me, with a double trigger, I can still overcome this 21k number, but he still has a heal in his deck.
Double heal. Double heal. Do it.
And it is not, and this is basically GG,
man.
where I managed to get the second win of the tournament, and these were some insane matches, if I'm gonna be very honest. And sadly, I do not have the footage, but my chat and I personally went nuts, because I finally had a double win here, and it was also a very, very close match, and both games were pretty insane here. So again, I want to give a big shout out to not only Cardfight Vision for hosting this tournament, because it was an honor, it was a blast, and I definitely hope they're going to do more of these in the future, with either just for the whole community, or again with a content creator tournament where we once again can join everybody, because I know other content creators that sadly missed out. Either they just forgot that they were invited, or they sadly didn't invite it, and I think it would definitely be a blast to do this once again. So definitely big shout out to Cardfight, support those guys. And also I want to give a big shout out to Truechampionsteven for being the mad lad, for allowing me to showcase this footage for you guys so you can enjoy what happened during this championship. And definitely follow me on Twitch if you guys want to be updated with ever other live streams, because I'm definitely going to live stream more often. And I'm going to try to figure out a schedule, but I'm not too sure what type of schedule I can follow or it's doable for me. But I'm definitely going to work on that. And also, if you're interested in the deck list, so the Royal Paladin and the Riser build, and how I pilot it and how I usually proceed to go into matches, then definitely follow the channel, subscribe, and hit the bell button to be updated for future videos, because I'm going to upload those 2 deck profiles within a week. I'm not so sure when I'm gonna upload them, but definitely within a week I will upload those to the channel. So definitely keep an eye out on those videos. But that's basically everything for me today. I definitely want to give a shout out to my patrons over at patreon.com for making everything happening. And again, all the new guys, follow me on Twitch and also write my avatar for the first donation on the channel. Definitely appreciate the support. So big shout out to all you guys. But if you too want to support, then you can either do that simply by subscribing and hitting the bell button on the channel. Also liking this video or whatever video on the channel is always going to help. And definitely go to my Twitch or Twitter and follow me there for future content and all the insights that you can have for this channel and whatever I might do on the internet. But with that said, I'm Mr. Timely. And I'll see you guys in the next one.